Hi, Julie.
Hello.
Okay, so I am Miss Maggie, and we are going to be doing a little bit of we're going to be reading a story, and I'm going to ask you questions. I just want you to do your best and just listen to me, okay?
Okay.
All right, I am going to share my screen. All right. Do you see something on my screen?
Yep.
All right, what do you see?
I see the cover of a book named Miss Nelson is Missing.
Wow, you already went ahead. I was going to ask you to please read the title. Okay. Well, let's go down here. Do you know what this means? Do you know what those words mean right here?
That is the author.
Yes, exactly. That is the author. The author is James Marshall. James Marshall is the person who wrote Miss Nelson is Missing. So, I am going to read you a book about some children and their teacher. The students are acting up and not paying attention in class. All of a sudden, Miss Nelson disappears and a new teacher, Miss Swamp, comes to teach, and she is not nice. The students wonder what happened to Miss Nelson and try to find her. In the end, Miss Nelson returns and the students are much happier and behave. They don't want Miss Nelson to go missing. When we read the book, there might be some words that you don't quite understand. And we'll stop and we'll talk about them, okay? Some words, give me one sec. Let me delete this. Okay. Some words in the book, maybe some that you have not heard about. So we're going to talk about some of them. So let me just bring them to your attention first. One word will be misbehave. Do you know what misbehave means, Julie?
Maybe like when a kid is acting out.
Yes, perfect. Acting out, not listening. Have you heard of what a spitball is?
Maybe like when somebody like spits like out like a piece of paper.
Yes. So let's think about it. We have spit and we have ball. When you put them together, it's a spitball. Exactly how you said. What do you think whizzed means? And it's okay if you don't know, I can
I don't
tell you.
know.
Okay, let's think. Let's say I said Miss Maggie whizzed by.
Ran?
Close. Flew by really fast is what it means. How about settle down?
Like calm down.
Yep, exactly. What about if I said, I refuse, Julie? What does refuse mean?
Like no.
No, I will not do that. How about act up?
Not listening.
Not listening, right? The kids are acting up. So these are some words that you're going to be seeing in the storybook, and we'll stop and I might ask you, what does it mean? Okay. And I'm going to show you the story. And then I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So make sure you have your listening ears on, okay? Are you still able to see the story by chance?
Yep.
Is it too small or too big?
Mm,
I can probably make it bigger.
that should be fine. Yeah, that works.
Okay, Miss
Perfect.
Maggie's line.
Oh, perfect. That was great.
Here we are. The kids in room 207 were misbehaving again. Spitballs stuck to the ceiling. Spitballs. We just learned about that. What does spitball mean?
Like a ball of paper
Yes. And
was
where did they go?
on the ceiling.
On the ceiling. Paper planes whizzed through the air. They were the worst behaved class in the whole school. Whizzed is another. What flew by in the air?
Paper plane.
Yes, and they went by real fast, right? Because that's what whiz means. Now settle down, said Miss Nelson in a sweet voice. But the class would not settle down. What did we say settle down means?
Like calm down.
The class was not calming down. They whispered and giggled. They squirmed and made faces. Squirmed? What does squirm mean to
Like
you?
wiggle.
Wiggle around, squirming around. It's like if you have ants in your pants. They were even rude during story hour. Mm-mm-mm. And they always refused to do their lessons. Refuse. What does refuse mean?
They said no.
No, they refused. They said, nope, not doing lessons. Something will have to be done, said Miss Nelson. Hmm. The next morning, Miss Nelson did not come to school. Wow, yelled the kids. Now we can really act up. Act up? What does act up mean?
Not listen.
Not listening. They began to make more spitballs and paper planes. Let's just be terrible, they said. Is terrible a good thing?
No.
No, it's not. Not so fast, hissed an unpleasant voice. Unpleasant. Have you heard of that word before?
Mm, I don't think so.
I'll give you an example. Pleasant means, oh, it was a pleasant seeing you. Like I was really happy to see you. But if I said it was so unpleasant of seeing you, that means I'm not that happy to see you. So the un makes it not a good thing. A woman in an ugly black dress stood before them. I am your new teacher, Miss Viola Swamp, and she rapped the desk with her ruler. Where is Miss Nelson? Asked the kids. Never mind that, snapped Miss Swamp. Open those arithmetic books. Oh, what does Miss Swamp sound like?
She is like really mad.
She's not a really fun teacher. Miss Nelson's kids did as they were told. They could see that Miss Swamp was a real witch. Is she a real witch?
No, they're just pretending
Why do you think they're calling her a witch?
because she's not being nice.
hmm She meant business. Right away, she put them to work and she loaded them down with homework. Well, we'll have no story hour today, said Miss Swamp. Keep your mouth shut, said Miss Swamp. Sit perfectly still, said Miss Swamp. And if you misbehave, you'll be sorry, said Miss Swamp. Sit perfectly still? What does she mean by that?
Like, don't move.
Mm-mm. The kids in room 207 had never worked so hard. Days went by and there was no sign of Miss Nelson. The kids missed Miss Nelson. Maybe we should try to find her, they said. Some of them went to the police. Detective Miss Smog was assigned to the case. Do you know what a detective is?
Like, they investigate a crime.
Mm-hmm. Which is the perfect thing to do in this book. He listened to their story. He scratched his chin. He said, I think Miss Nelson is missing. Detective Miss McSmog would not be much help. Other kids went to Miss Nelson's house. The shades were tightly drawn and no one answered the door. The shades were tightly drawn? What does that mean? Shades. Like, is she wearing some shades? The shades were tightly drawn and no one answered the door.
Like, maybe the curtains?
Yeah, like curtains are different types of shades. They were closed, meaning no one's home. In fact, the only person they did see was the wicked Miss Viola Swamp coming up the street. If she sees us, she'll give us more homework. They got away just in time. Maybe something terrible happened to Miss Nelson. Maybe she was gobbled up by a shark and said one of the kids, but that didn't seem likely. Uh-oh. Maybe Miss Nelson went to Mars, said another kid, but that didn't seem likely either. I know, exclaimed one know-it-all. Maybe Miss Nelson's car was carried off by a swarm of angry butterflies, but that was the least likely of all. The kids in room 207 became very discouraged. What does discouraged mean, Julie?
Like they didn't think they were going to find Miss Nelson, so they kind of like were maybe gonna give up.
Yeah, because when someone has courage, they're not going to give up. But when someone's discouraged, they're not as motivated. It seemed that Miss Nelson was never coming back, and they would be stuck with Miss Viola Swamp forever. They heard footsteps in the hall. Here comes the witch, they whispered. Hello, children? Someone said with a sweet voice. Who could it be? It was Miss Nelson. Did you miss me? She asked. We certainly did, cried all the kids. Where were you? That's my little secret, said Miss Nelson. How about a story hour? Oh, yes, cried the kids. Miss Nelson noticed that during story hour, no one was rude or silly. What brought about this lovely change? She asked. That's our little secret, said the kids. Back home, Miss Nelson took off her coat and hung it in the closet right next to an ugly black dress. When it was time for bed, she sang a little song. I'll never tell, she said herself with a smile. P.S. Detective McSmog is working on a new case. He is now looking for Miss Viola Swamp. The end. All right, Miss Julie, that was a long story. So now I am going to, let's see, give me one sec. All right, let's talk about the characters. Can we name some characters?
Um, we have Miss Nelson, and then
Yes. So we're
um,
looking for people. These are the characters. We have Miss Nelson, and there was a bunch of other what? Because where are they?
they're at school.
So they're in a,
They're in the classroom.
and there's what in a classroom?
Kids, a lot of kids.
Kids, yes. And guess what? With that saying, we figured out the setting is where?
In a classroom in the school.
In the school. There's some other settings. Where else did they go?
Mm, they went to the police station.
Yes, and they went to Miss Nelson's home. What was the complication?
Hmm. They couldn't find her.
They couldn't find her. So what was their action? What did they do?
They started to look for her. They even went to the police station and they just wanted to find her.
Their plan was to what?
Find Miss Nelson and get
Find
rid
Miss Nelson.
of
Yes,
Kill
Miss,
Swamp.
we
Miss
wanted her back. The plan is to get her back.
Yep.
And what were their feelings and emotions during this time with Mrs. Swamp or Miss Swamp?
They they were feeling upset, sad, frustrated, discouraged.
All of it, right? And what was the landing?
Mm, what's landing again?
So the outcome, they ended up getting who back?
Miss Nelson, she came back.
She came back. Yes. All right. I'm going to ask you just a couple more questions. Who was the main character in the story?
Miss Nelson
Hmm.
and Miss Swamp. And all the
Yes.
kiddos. All the
Yes.
kids.
But the main character was Miss Nelson. What other characters were in the story? You already mentioned those. We said Miss Swamp, the kids, and who was that person? The detective.
Detective McSmog.
Yes. And where did the story take place? There was a few.
In their classroom at the school. They went to Miss Nelson's house.
Yes. Right.
They went to the police station.
Hmm. And what was how was Miss Swamp different from Miss Nelson?
Miss Swamp was like a very sweet teacher and super loving. And
Miss Swamp or
wait,
Miss
no, no,
Nelson?
sorry.
Hmm.
Miss Nelson was super sweet. And then Miss Swamp was just not so nice.
Yes. And what was the takeoff of the story? The problem. What started the story?
Miss Nelson went missing
Yes. Why did Miss Nelson leave?
because the kids weren't listening and they were misbehaving.
Yes, good, because the students were misbehaving. Why did what did the children think had happened to Miss Nelson?
They actually didn't know. That's why they went to go look for her.
They did guess that maybe she went where in
Oh,
space?
to Mars.
Mars. And did any of those things really happen to Miss Nelson?
No,
No, she didn't go missing. She didn't go to Mars. She was there the whole time. How do you know none of these things happened to Miss Nelson?
because Miss Nelson ended up coming back.
Yeah, so how could she have gotten eaten by a shark?
That's that's silly.
Hmm. Why do you think the author had the children in the story imagine these crazy things about Miss Nelson?
Hmm. Maybe to like picture what's going on or like I don't know.
Anything. I mean, maybe he wanted us to see the different types of imagination kids have. What detect was Detective Smog very helpful in finding Miss Nelson?
No.
Why not?
He just what he wasn't the best. He didn't want to go
Yes.
looking for her.
Mhm. How did the children feel when they couldn't find Miss Nelson?
They were so sad. They were upset.
Very sad. What does sad mean to you?
Sad means when you just feel like you want to cry.
Yes, that's a great example. And how did the children act when Miss Nelson came back?
So excited
They were happy. Um, why do you think the children improved their behavior when Miss Nelson came back?
because they never wanted her to leave again.
Yep, because they didn't want Miss Nelson to leave again. And why did the children want to have Miss Nelson as their teacher rather than Miss Swamp?
Because Miss Swamp was just so mean.
It was not nice.
And Miss Nelson was just the sweetest teacher ever.
Yes, Miss Nelson was nice. How do you think the kids felt at the end of the story?
So happy.
Happy.
Relieved.
Yes, and why do you think the kids were happy at the end of the story?
Because Miss Nelson was back as their teacher.
Because they had their nice teacher back. Very good. How do you know Miss Nelson was actually was actually Miss Viola Swamp?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
How do you know Miss Nelson was actually Miss Viola Swamp? Do you remember?
Hmm.
What did she do at the end of the story? What did she put in her closet?
She put her jacket.
Her black
Her
dress.
black.
Clothes. Yes.
Oh, that's
Did that.
right.
All right. Now we are going to take turns, and since it's only one-on-one, I'm just going to have you retell the story back to me. And if for some reason I notice you forget something, I'll show you my little pictures and be like, don't forget. But you can tell me how you remember it, okay?
Okay.
And begin when you are ready.
Okay. So there were multiple characters in the story. There was Miss Nelson and the kids. Um, and then they were in the school
Yes.
and in the classroom. And they were just loving Miss Nelson, getting along with her because she was like the sweetest teacher ever. And then one day she just disappeared. She did not come back to class. And so they got this substitute who was Miss Swamp. And Miss Swamp was just so mean to them. And
So how
she,
did they feel?
they felt so upset that Miss Nelson did not come back. And they felt so upset and angry. They had a substitute that they didn't really like, and that was Miss Swamp.
And what was
And
the action? What did they decide to do?
so they decided that they were going to go to the police station and look for Mrs. Swamp. They even went to her house too. But, oh, that also is another character. Detective McSwab.
Oh.
Yes. And he wasn't really helpful, like at all. So the kids had to take action and they had to look for look themselves. Um, so they were upset that she was not coming back. Um, and then they were in class one day and Miss Nelson showed up.
Yes, that's the landing. She
Yes,
showed up. And
she
what
just
were their
came
feelings?
back. And they were feeling so happy, so relieved that she was finally back,
Yep.
and they never wanted her to leave again. So they had to really be on their best behavior.
Very good, Julie. Awesome. I just needed to show you one time a picture to remind you what to add, but that was great. All right.